Everybody, thanks for joining us today. We have a really packed agenda, so we're gonna kick this off right away and move through this initial introductory content very quickly. We'll have our two breakouts today. We have one for the tech one focused on rights of way and easements for tribal energy projects, and the tribal climate health project focused on tribal climate adaptation through public health. And we're actually going to get to these as soon as possible and stay in each of these breakouts until the end of the hour. So I'm Josh Simmons, the co-director of the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative. Here today, I'm joined by Angie Hacker and Shasta Gaughan. Shasta is a co-director of the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative. They are both running the Tribal Climate Health Project. I won't go into the background of each of these programs. You can review these in the slides later on, and we have in prior events before. I'm going to very quickly breeze through opportunities so we can just dive right in. So I'm not going to read off necessarily all of these right now. Want to note if you're interested in the California Resilience Implementation Accelerator opportunity, that's due on April 1st, so coming up pretty soon. So some endangered species and wildfire smoke grants, the tribal nature-based solutions for tribes that are interested in land back, some modeling for air quality and co-benefits of energy interventions. Some geothermal funding came out recently, and the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities funding opportunity recently was released. Some business and workforce development grants from CAL FIRE, water finance, and then the California Forest Improvements funding opportunity through CAL FIRE. So we have some stuff on the horizon, most notably the Community Resilience Center and Tribal Capacity Building Program and Transformative Climate Communities grant programs from Strategic Growth Council. As many upcoming events. We'll join Angie at the TECC conference. I believe that's a little further down. The Tribal Leaders Energy and Safety Summit at Viejas is coming up in May. A few other events, and then some input opportunities. The Tribal Housing Pre-Development Fund draft guidelines are still seeking comment. Tribal Capacity Building Program as well. And I got through that pretty fast. So we want to leave as much time as possible to break out and move into the other sessions. We'll continue to admit people. For those that want to join Angie and Shasta to discuss tribal climate adaptation through public health, which should only be tribal representatives, when we will work to ensure that that is the case. Join the breakouts, otherwise stay here, and then Serena will help move tribal representatives to the other session if they want. Just indicate in the chat if you're having trouble. So Serena, were you able to set the breakout yet?
Just to chime in here, Josh, so when you join the Tribal Climate Health Project breakout room, it's going to be a focus group with our friends at the California Department of Public Health to talk about the shared vision and action plan. So we really want tribal folks who are interested in climate change and health to join us over there. It could be staff or other representation, members of tribes. We'd love to have your input. Come over to the breakout.
Without further ado, I'm going to dive into rights of way and easements for tribal energy projects. So again, I'm Josh Simmons, co-director of the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative, joined by Karen Woodard, Morongo Band of Mission Indians. So this is a co-branded event. So we have our regular training series that's funded by a California Public Utilities Commission Equity and Access grants. And so since this is kind of relevant, very relevant to one of the topics we've been focusing on, we wanted to kind of share the source of the funding in that effort as well. And we encourage you to join those monthly webinars as well. We do have a separate session, I believe, next week that's focused on rates. I also, because we are getting into some regulations and other stuff, I want to provide a disclaimer that the info provided in this meeting is for general education informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, professional advice. Speakers and organizers make no representations or warranties as to accuracy or completeness of the content. Views expressed are those of the presenters and not necessarily of the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative or Southern California Tribal Chairman Association. Any reliance placed on this material is strictly at your own risk, and the presenters and tech should not be held liable for any damages or losses resulting from the use of misinformation. So, okay, I'll turn it over to Karen for her introduction, and then we'll start diving in. Oh, and Karen froze right when she was about to introduce herself. Karen, can you hear us? She's still on. I still see her. Okay, well, I will move forward and then come back to Karen. Actually, maybe she may not realize she's frozen, so let me just text her.
She might be rejoining.
Okay. Okay. All right, so what I would like to encourage you all to do, and we'll have time, a lot of time, hopefully ample time for discussion toward the latter half of this session. So in my experience, most, if not all, tribes are experiencing challenges relating to rights of way. And, we're focused here today on energy projects. But I know the rights of way challenges go well beyond energy projects. So I would love for you all to share your rights of way related challenges in the chats. And then if you are finding any sorts of solutions or workarounds or whatever it might be, please share that as well. I would like to come back and share and discuss some of those as a group, and I'll read some of those responses and provide more of an opportunity for people to share a bit more. But we want really to focus, I think, more on the solutions today than anything else. But we also want the context of like what are those pain points, what are those challenges, how many months, years, what types of homes, facilities are they affecting, and how is your tribe being impacted in the challenges related to obtaining rights of way. All right, so there's been a lot of effort around rights of way in the recent future, I suppose, last few years. So the California Public Utilities Commission and BIA hosted a series of joint state-federal workshops on rights of way for utility infrastructure development on tribal lands. So this is somewhat related to the CPUC's Tribal Order Instituting rulemaking. They had a right-of-way workshop on July 9th in 2024. And so their slides are still a recording of that available. And then they had a second workshop that was held at Rincon on November 14th, 2024. I was able to attend that event, and they have the slides and recording of that available as well. CPUC took notes from both events. Those are published too and can be accessed. But there's a lot of information out there on rights of way that I will advise you all to go back to. I'm actually going to recover some of BIA's content here in a moment. I don't feel like it's necessary to have recreated slides around this. They're really, to a large degree, are just kind of articulating the regulations. But the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative is taking initiative in trying to address the rights of way challenges. And the rights of way challenges, oh, sorry, Shasta.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just want to remind you all that if you're a tribal representative and you want to be part of our California Department of Public Health focus group in the breakout room, it's much cooler and more interesting over there. So, because I see we've got some tribal folks who are over here on the boring side, and boring but important, no offense. So if you just want to click on the join breakout room button in the bottom, you can join our room. Again, tribal representatives only for that one. And I'm going to now flee. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
You can go over there and be less likely to be interrupted by somebody as opposed to.
Bye.
All right. Well, yeah, please, if you're having trouble joining the breakout, let us know in the chat. Serena can reassign you. It's not always the easiest in Zoom to find out how to get to breakouts. Okay, so.
Sorry, Josh. Karen is back.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back, Karen. So when I get through this slide, I will allow you to introduce yourself. Actually, I'll hold it off until we get into your portion of it. So so as I mentioned, TECC has been taking the initiative and trying to resolve some of these challenges. And you know, the work that TECC has been doing and my work through Prosper Sustainably and supporting tribes on clean energy projects, we are experiencing these challenges firsthand, and, you know, and navigating them, and are starting to see like some opportunities, some solutions out there, and want to make a concerted effort to resolve them, because you know tribes cannot be waiting years to get a new home hooked up, you know, or get a new microgrid system online. And you know, it's an unfortunate set of circumstances. There's no kind of single culpable entity, but it's kind of a convoluted, kind of interjurisdictional matter that hopefully can be resolved from a legislative standpoint, a legislative fix, and we'll get to that in a moment. But you know, we're seeing some pathways from a regulatory standpoint within the, you know, the existing regulation. So as part of this, so the rights of way themselves for energy projects are just kind of one part of the process. So you're trying to get a new home or new building hooked up, you're trying to get a solar array online, an interconnected, a battery energy storage system, EV infrastructure, whatever it might be. And the process to either get a new facility or home energized, or to get a new energy generation facility interconnected, is already a lengthy process, even without rights of way. So what can already be a lengthy process now, introducing the rights of way, which can require BIA approval, can make something that could be, you know, a year or more, potentially double in time. So on February 18th, we held a convening at Paula that was for the TECC tribes, to focus on the challenges tribes are facing with energization and interconnection, and solutions for those challenges. And so rights of way was a big part of that conversation, but we really try to look at all the parts of the processes of interconnection and energization, and opportunities potentially to streamline, to better track applications, and how tribes are progressing. And so there's some opportunity and room for improvement all around. And so like TECC is committed to continuing to progress these solutions and these fixes. And so that's why, you know, we had that event for the TECC tribes down south. But this is a statewide issue. This is actually, you know, this is a nationwide issue. And we really want to expand the conversation statewide to engage other tribes in not just being able to communicate the challenges, but participate in solving these challenges. So there are different regulations, different legislation and regulations that affect, really govern land encumbrances. And so when we say land encumbrances here, we're talking about tribal trust lands. So the main one that we're focused on is 25 CFR 169, and that governs rights of way over Indian land. So a few interesting things. Well, maybe I should come back to these in a moment. And before, well, let me get into the weeds on this first, and then I'll come back to this slide in just a minute. Okay, so as I mentioned, I don't want to reinvent the wheel on this. There's been a lot of information presented on this already. BIA has presented at all three of the events I mentioned here. And instead of recreating their slides, I figured I would just pull up some of their slides from some of the events that they've already presented at. Encourage you to go and review these slides, because this deck just from the July event is 157 slides. It's not just BIA, it's a bunch of different agencies and others, with a lot of useful content and information. So I wanted to pull up, you know, this slide first, because I think it's useful, because this has the contacts for every region. So Southern California Agency Office, Yvonne Rangel, I know is on leave right now, so you may have a little more difficulty getting a hold of her. But you know, if you're in Central Agency's office territory, or Northern, or Palm Springs, you know, you have the contacts here, their phone numbers, their email addresses. So these are the people you should be reaching out to at BIA. So I'm just going to scan through these slides and hit some high points to kind of put this all in context. So the rights of way we're talking about here are for trust lands, for tribal trust land projects. So land held in trust by the United States for the benefit of tribes, which can also, you know, also include allotted lands. So the rights of way regulations we're talking about here are only applicable for easements or legal rights of way on tribal trust lands. So these are granting a right of way where the actual title to the land remains vested in the landowner, which is technically the federal government, but it is held in trust for the tribe. So this is, an interest for kind of use or control for a specified period of time for a specified purpose. So it applies to BIA, to tribal trust land. It does not apply to fee land or fee interest. So tribes own land in the state of California in fee simple, just like, you or I could own our property with which we have a home on. These regulations do not apply to land held in fee simple by tribes. So basically, rights of way are needed if it's a third party that is seeking that right of way on tribal lands. If a tribe does not need a BIA approved right of way if it's granting an interest to itself or an entity under itself. So just again, very generally, come back and read these slides. So BIA has if you want to better understand the process, you can read this flow chart and come back to it. The process can take a while. So BIA gets in a full application package. They have 10 days to respond. If the application package is complete, they're supposed to issue the right of way within 60 days. But getting the information for the application package, the survey, the NEPA, the appraisal, so on and so forth, that takes a lot of time. If the application isn't complete, then it can be kicked back. BIA can actually get even, I think, an additional 30 or 60 days as well on top of the 60 days if they need more time. So, what could be potentially just a few months process, I think in reality, in practice, ends up being 6 months to a year or more. And this is, as I mentioned, this is just a part of a process for a tribe trying to get a hookup to a new home or facility or generation asset. So, if it's just simple seeking permission, that's not a right of way, that can just be obtained from the tribe. We don't need to kind of go into that. So there's a lot of application documents that need to be prepared and provided to the BIA. The applicant for the right of way itself is actually not the tribe. If it's a utility project, it's going to be the utility. So if it's PG&E, San Diego Gas and Electric, Edison, Southern California Gas Company, one of the broadband or telecom providers, if they're seeking a right of way for their equipment, they are the ones that are applying for the right of way from the BIA, but the tribe does need to be involved and approve it. So, BIA has a sample right of way application you can review. The tribal consent is required, and that consent will vary if it's allotted land that has fractional interest versus land that's held 100% by the tribe itself. So different type of consent needs to be required, and I won't go into those details again. Come back to these slides. There's a sample landowner consent form they have available. Tribes can seek compensation. The BIA will defer to tribes on seeking compensation for rights of way, but know that is an option for tribes for issuing rights of way. And again, I'll kind of continue to scroll through there. There's a sample applicant checklist for everything that's required from the BIA's perspective on the rights of way. And here's where I mentioned, the process with which an application needs to be acknowledged within 10 days. Completed application should result in an issued right of way within 60 days, but the BIA can request an extension if they need more time. So, if there is a right of way in place for the rights of way can be amended if it's something within the same scope, same area, and doesn't require ground disturbance. But if it's going to require ground disturbance, it'll require a new right of way. So then there's the concept of trespass. If infrastructure has been installed on tribal lands and a right of way either has not been obtained or that right of way term has expired, then that those assets, let's say it's distribution lines, a transformer, whatever it might be, they're in trespass, and then will be subject to the jurisdiction of the tribal court or the Justice Department or the BIA. The tribes are, I think, mostly interested in continuing to get energy from those. If we're talking about utility infrastructure on their lands, providing energy. So I think in most cases we see tribes and the BIA working with any utilities that happen to be in trespass. Want to distinguish the full rights of way from service line agreements. So service line agreements are just really, I would say, the last, I mean, we wouldn't call it the last mile, maybe the last, few feet or a few hundred feet. So a service line agreement must come off of an existing rights of way. So this would be, the best example is going to be, you have the distribution line going down the street, and then you have the line going from that distribution line to a house. That would be the service line. If that distribution line has a fully approved right of way, then only a service line agreement is needed for connecting that house. However, if that distribution line does not have a right of way, then that right of way needs to be obtained for the distribution line before a service line agreement can be issued. So it's re-explained in this slide right here. And so it's a simpler process. Service line agreements do not require BIA approval. They must be recorded with the BIA within 30 days. But this makes it a simpler process than needing to obtain a full right of way. And here's a sample service line agreement and plat. And I'll move back onto the other slides. So thank you, BIA, for presenting that information earlier. And I gave you credit, so it's not technically plagiarizing. But again, I would go back, review the recordings of both workshops, and there's a lot of useful information there. Okay, so coming back to rights of way itself. So all that was under 25 CFR 169, the rights of way over Indian land regulations. So I want to point out 169.4. And the question is, when do I need a right of way to authorize possession across Indian land? And so I want to point out that it says you do not need a right of way to cross Indian land if, and one of the provisions under that is another land use agreement not subject to this part. For example, under 25 CFR part 84. So I want to move from I'll come back to 84 in a minute. I want to go to 162 that tribes are probably familiar with, which governs leases and permits. So tribes are trying to issue leases for a variety of things for energy projects. If you're doing a power purchase agreement with a third-party developer and they're trying to sell power to the tribe, they may be pursuing a lease. Tribes have the ability to assume the authority to issue leases under the Hearth Act. So that's, I believe, covered under, related to 25 CFR 162. This same regulation also covers permits, and tribes can also issue permits without BIA approval, which are written non-assignable agreements between the tribe or the Indian landowner or BIA to a permittee where they are granted temporary revocable privilege to use Indian land or government land for a specific purpose. Okay, so want to now introduce the concept of what used to be called temporary access permits, but we're going to start calling them something different so they're not confused with actual permits, where we have tribes that are essentially licensing land on a temporary basis under 7 years, under 25 CFR 84, for the installation of utility infrastructure so that tribes and the utility do not need to wait until the BIA fully approves the right of way before the utility can proceed with installing the infrastructure or the line. Go ahead, Rob. We'll generally wait for questions at the end. I don't know, Rob, could you put it in the chat? And then we'll come back to it. Sorry, maybe you didn't mean to do that. Okay, so that's what I want to point out for permits. They're temporary. A permit could be used by a tribe and be issued for this infrastructure. In most cases, the utility likely is not going to accept having a revocable permit be used for them to receive an interest in the lands. But under 25 CFR 84, this has kind of been the basis of these temporary access licenses for those installations. So under 84002, it focuses on encumbrance of tribal land for contract approval. So encumber means to attach a claim, lien, charge, right of entry, or liability to real property. And encumbrances under this part may include mortgages, easements, or other contracts or agreements by their terms, which give third-party exclusive or nearly exclusive proprietary control over tribal land. So I should have underlined it, and I will fix that right now, the easements part of this. So functionally, this allows for some of the same authority that's granted under 169, which covers rights of way. This one covers easements as well and other types of agreements for exclusive or near exclusive proprietary control over tribal lands. So under 84003, secretary approval, meaning the BIA must approve agreements that encumber tribal lands for a period of 7 or more years. So 84004 states that contracts under the secretary will not approve contracts or agreements for less than 7 years. So so I think that's kind of critical. Basically, tribes have the authority under this well, the BIA will not approve. Tribes have the authority to issue agreements for less than 7 years. So under 84005, it states that the secretary will not approve contract agreements that do not encumber tribal lands for a period of 7 more years, and that if secretary approval is sought, the secretary, within receipt of that document and that request, they will return it with a statement explaining why the secretary approval is not required. So, all right, so this is kind of a long, drawn-out process of trying to turn it over to Karen to talk about the process of which tribes are granting temporary access under 7 years for energy related projects. So, Karen, I'll turn it over to you for your introduction, and then we'll dive into some questions.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Karen Woodard. I'm the Realty Administrator for the Morongo Band of Mission Indians. I've been with the tribe 26 years. Have been involved in their realty and title program for over 20 years now. And we have been using temporary access permits, we call them TAPs, to assist with housing and economic development.
Thanks, Karen. So why has Morongo used these sub 7 year grants of access for energy infrastructure projects?
Because of the BIA process. It takes too long. And generally, like they say, they have a timeline, to approve. Generally, you get a request to extend. They just don't have the staffing to review each one of those right-of-way applications. And as we've talked about before, it's actually the utility that is the applicant and wants this right-of-way in order to bring that infrastructure into the home. So many years ago, the tribe was looking at, especially when we were expanding and building our new casino resort, getting a BIA right-of-way, going through the NEPA process, which was just taking too long. So we came up with this temporary access permit. At the time, it was under 81. It has now since, been amended, and now it's 84. But we started that way back early 2000s, worked with Edison on that, and they were fine. Like I said, we've gotten right-of-ways we can do. Well, Morongo contracts our realty and title function now. So we can get a right-of-way done much quicker than the BIA because we have the staff for it. So we do the temporary access permit, which gives us 7 years, or gives the applicant the utility to apply for that right-of-way and put all of those documents together. Now we assist the utility in putting those documents together, informing them what we need as far as, the survey. We need the environmental document. We need, all of these, the corporation documents, who has the authority to sign, all these kinds of things. So we generally, and what we do now is we meet with our Southern California Edison on a regular basis generally every quarter to go over those taps, to see, you know, which ones still need, to be approved, for right-of-ways. So that's, been very helpful to the tribe. It's been very helpful to our economic development programs and, to our housing. We had tribal members that were sitting out there in a house that they had built, and they were waiting 2 years to get a utility, or energized and service on. Which people get a little reckless, you know, when that happens. You know, they might plug into, you know, their neighbor's, you know, box, or, you know, we started running an extension cord and becoming a public safety issue. So the temporary access permit, was very helpful in getting our housing projects done.
Okay, so you kind of touched upon it a little bit of kind of the process through which you apply for a temporary access permit. You know, my understanding in working with you on it and you know, in reviewing this process is that it's like kind of a stepping stone. It's like it's kind of mirroring the process of getting a full right away.
Correct.
And like, so you're kind of making progress. So yeah, how is it similar? How is it different? How do they relate? How is it a stepping stone?
Yeah. So it at least gives us the opportunity to get in there and get the project done, the construction done, and then it gives us the opportunity to get energized. Then we go behind, and we generally, a lot of these processes can be done consecutively. They can all be done at some point together. Once we know where this utility is going to go, then we send our surveyors in. They go behind the utility company, and they find out, you know, if it's a trench or if it's an overhead line where the poles are going. So we can send the surveyor in. We have our cultural resources department. We have our TIPO department. They make all their and our environmental documents. They do that all internally. And then, so we kind of do the whole package as we move along. I'm hoping that makes sense. It's not, like I said, the temporary access permit just allows the utility to get in there, do their construction, and energize whatever that facility is. Then we go back and then we issue those, you know, putting the BIA application and getting the BIA approval together. They do relate. I mean, they are, the object is to get the project energized and on. So they do relate to each other. This just allows us to get a little ahead of it, and not have to wait, you know, sometimes, you know, 12 months, 18 months, maybe 2 years to get a BIA right-of-way approved, especially when it comes to the NEPA document. There seems to be, depending on what the project is, you may have your Sacramento, the regional office review the NEPA, or it may go all the way back to the central office, depending on what the project is. If it's a microgrid, if it's solar related, this administration wants all of those rights of ways to go to the central office for review. I don't know why, but that's what they do. And it can sit on somebody's desk for much longer than it does at the BIA. But yes, they are relatable. They're just, like I said, giving us that head start to get in there and get this project moving forward. And then coming along with the BIA right-of-way process. And under 84, they do talk about, you know, economic development. The purpose of this 7-year permit, license, or whatever you want to call it, allows for the economic development to move forward. It allows for the, you know, housing project to move forward. And I see we have a question here.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna get through this, then we'll open it up to full questions for everybody. So, you know, so it's like you're doing the
Yeah, but-
surveys, you're doing the environmental analysis, you're essentially getting the tribal consent. You know, are going to need a tribal resolution to access this temporary access, to authorize it. So you're kind of checking off all these boxes. So, I mean, I think the environmental ends up being something that is a challenge right now, because so when you work on these, you know, from Morongo and then also for other tribes, do you have the utility or that third party do the environmental, or do you have the tribe do the environmental?
And that was a big discussion down at Paula. Sometimes the utility wants to do an environmental, and the BIA wants to do an environmental, and then the tribe wants to do an environmental. You know, so that can get really cumbersome. The tribe prefers that we do that environmental document. If the utility wants to review it, fine. If the BIA wants to review it, that's fine too. But we prefer it to be the document that rules this right away. and that, they have, confidence in us that we can go out there and look at the ground, do our pedestrian surveys, look for cultural artifacts, those types of things. And it really, when you do allotments, which is different than it is tribal trust lands, allotments are a lot different, and we get really frustrated when they want to do this full-blown NEPA for a home, for a residence. They should be able to accept our environmental document. Like I said, we know what's out there on the ground. But sometimes that gets all, in that bureaucracy that, and it's not fair to the individual tribe member who just wants to build a home and, live out there. So yeah, we definitely think that they should use our environmental document.
Okay, so like when you're, and then, for like when Morongo's doing their own, and then like, you'd work with the tribe for doing their environmental, but I think the key thing is it should be NEPA compliant environmental review, because ultimately that is what's gonna be required for the full right of way. And that is part of, so part of the discussion here is like, okay, there's this somewhat, stopgap measure to get these, get this temporary access, I'll call it a license, for land access, for that land access. But there are other ways to streamline this process, and environmental is one that is, kind of holds things up, because if the utility completes one and they're doing it according to CEQA or not doing it, in concert with the tribe who understands its land, its cultural resources, and all that. And then, BIA has kind of different, different people working on it with like different perspective. I think there can be efforts to harmonize this, and that was talked about at the convening as well.
Yes. Yep.
So I guess, and just this is, so people are aware, Morongo, well, so can you share about Morongo's BIA compacted authority for programs, functions, services, and activities, including realty and title programs, so background on how that was obtained and what that covers?
Yeah, so Morongo, a lot of you probably remember when we went through the whole Cobell settlement and things were stalled at the, lands, titles, and records offices. Realty transactions weren't getting processed, residential leasing, HUD 184 loans weren't getting processed. So the tribe decided, and we had like 60, I think it was 60 plus homes that people had already requested TSRs for, wanting to get the HUD 184 loan when it came out. We met with the BIA and talked about what we were going to do about that. And at that time, we went through a process of how long will it take for you to clean up title for us? And they said, well, you have over this, thousands and thousands of records. It's probably going to take us 4 or 5 years to issue the first title status report. And we said, that's not good enough. So we decided to go and talk about contracting the realty and the title function from the Pacific region, which was very unusual. It took us almost 3 years to negotiate it because they just couldn't wrap their heads around it. Why would we want to do that? But we did. And then we went and contracted our realty, the title program, and it became a self-governance. We're a compact tribe now. But it really helped us understand better what our land assets were, what our records were, and then what, it improved the tribal member services. It improves the tribe for economic development. We can issue a TSR, within 24 hours rather than waiting for the, the BIA to, get to it when they can get to it. And it also helped with, our land use planning and our master planning, and overall economic development housing. We had 200 substandard homes on the reservation when I first started back in 2000. And we've actually gotten HUD 184 loans for every one of those. They've built new homes. And we've actually increased that housing inventory too. I think today we're about 615 homes. So that's been a real plus. Economic development, our tribal leases, we have leases with quick service restaurants or, different hotel we have going up, really improved that process. So yeah, there's a lot to go through there. Yeah.
Yeah, and so these are in the slide deck from the July 15th or the 2024 event at Sacramento. And so so Morongo is helping other tribes with temporary access licenses as well. Because their ability to do these services on behalf of BIA, they can do everything almost everything except they can't actually approve or
Mhm.
authorize it. But if Morongo completes these things, the BIA, sees it as if they've done it themselves. So anyway, this is a
Right.
resource that's available to tribes through Morongo, and this is an option that tribes can take advantage of themselves. Like tribes have the ability to get this contracted authority. I think it requires a bit of effort and capacity to do so. So just want to kind of point that out to everybody. So kind of before we open it up to everybody for discussion. So during the event we had at Paula on February 18th, we are finding that some IOUs are willing to proceed with the temporary access licenses, and that some are not. I think what I heard during that event is it kind of comes down to an understanding of the regulations and tribal authority. If you just stick within 25 CFR 169, it does not appear like tribes have any authority to issue this. If you then follow the thread and go to 84, you see that tribes actually do have the authority. And I can understand from a utility not saying, okay, well, that kind of looks good, but we have conservative attorneys and we really want something in writing from BIA. So this is what we're going to be pushing for now, is that we want to work with the tribe and with that utility in essentially preparing this temporary access license under 25 CFR 84, and then under 84005, issuing that to the BIA for approval. And then essentially they have to, within 30 days, provide a response explaining why their approval is not required. So that's one of the strategies right now we're working on that we want to share with everybody too, to standardize this. So the kind of broader effort is that we want this to be a standardized solution for tribes. So we would like to work, with Morongo, with tribes, with the BIA, with the utilities to say, here's a standard set of terms and conditions for these temporary licenses, temporary land licenses, with which you can proceed under just tribal authority to construct or add new service to facilities, interconnect new generation assets, whatever it might be, which is on the pathway to getting a right of way. And that if the tribe can fulfill its obligation on this, that you will have the comfort and in some recourse if the tribe does not to do so. So we want to be standardized and to get general acceptance all around, and that there be that documentation in place to create that level of comfort. So that's we're trying to work on streamlining things across the board, environmental, all these other processes as well. So that's we will continue to report as we make steps on that. I also want to mention that there are some legislative efforts out there right now to address rights of way. So there is proposed legislation introduced by Senator Schatz from Hawaii. It was introduced on December 8th. And it essentially, like tribes have the ability under the Hearth Act to assume the authority to issue leases, this legislation essentially would give them the same type of authority to issue rights of way. This is where we would like to be at. This is my understanding is that this has not progressed from being introduced. There's separate legislation to remove the 99, to allow tribes to issue leases for up to 99 years. That is progressed a bit further along, but to me, this is something that's a huge barrier for tribes. And I would also like to figure out how TECC and tribes in California can help support the advancement of this legislation that would essentially take this authority and this right out of the hands of the BIA, at least if the tribe adopts and gets a BIA approved ordinance for this, like they need to for leasing regs under the Hearth Act. Okay, so appreciate you all bearing with us as we work through that. Certainly we're getting into the weeds on some stuff here, but hopefully it was useful. We want to open it up to everybody. I'll go to some of the questions we have in the chat first. We'll open questions, discussions, thoughts on this, but you can share how your tribe's been affected, rights of way challenges affected your tribe's energy projects, if there have been any unique right of way challenges, if you've had any experience with solutions or workarounds that your tribe has used for energy projects regarding rights of way. If you have other ideas or recommendations for addressing these rights of way challenges, including how these processes could be streamlined. If you happen to have legislative insights or updates, I have not gone much further than just identifying the legislation at this point, or any other thoughts. So if you want to raise your hands, you also can enter information in the chat, but I'm going to start with some of the questions that I already have in here. And so somebody asked early on about the slides, about the opportunities that will be shared in a follow-up email, likely by the end of the week. Let's see. And feel free to raise your hand in the meantime. So Rob, do you want to just speak up and ask your questions? You still here, Rob?
What was that, Josh? I guess I didn't hear you very well, Josh. I
Why
guess you
don't
were
you,
asking
I
me
mean,
to unmute and ask my question. So I
Yeah.
guess my question was, has BIA ever said that they have, concerns over, a tribe using this 25 CFR part, what was it, 84, or 85 process to issue, a temporary access permit while waiting for the full BIA issued right away? I was just curious if BIA had kind of objected to that, or if they've kind of blessed this process.
Well, we heard a few. Well, Karen, why don't you go first, and I'll share what I've heard. Oh, Karen, did we lose you again?
Morongo goes, we do compact, and am I muted?
Yeah, you're good.
Can you hear me?
You're good.
Okay. Because we compact our program, they're not going to tell us, what the tribe, can do and can't do, right? So yeah, we've had no objections. If anything, what I've heard is, they like having a heads up that a right of way is coming, So, and we don't have to even, you don't have to submit the temporary access permit or that document to the Bureau for approval. You may have to do it if there's a right of way that's expired, and we did do that. We had some transmission lines that expired back in the late 90s, and they wanted so they were expiring in the late 90s. They weren't going to expire until like 2009. So we wanted to renew all of those at the same time. So we issued temporary access permits for that. And those got filed at the Bureau of Indian Affairs. But that was just for them to know that we weren't arguing over trespass, that there was negotiations going on with that right away.
Yeah, so Rob, we heard from Yvonne from the BIA during the event. This kind of question was posed to her about, does BIA have any objections to these? And, it wasn't a direct answer in the sense that I think the response that I recall was, we don't approve what we don't have the authority to approve, which I think is kind of what you see in the regs under both 162 and 84. I've been engaging the Pacific Region office, the full office, about this. I don't think they fully understand. I mean, since it's not within their authority, they don't really fully understand it. I'm not seeing that they're objecting. I don't, Karen, I'm not sure if you're familiar with other tribes. I heard that Seminole has issued licenses, I believe, under the same authority. Are you familiar with other tribes that are also been kind of issuing the same land access or easements?
I know we contract with 5 other tribes in Southern California. So I know they've been using the temporary access permit as well. And then we'll assist them, with getting the right-of-way documents and all of that together. But I haven't heard, I mean, California tribes, of course, I think we have a bit of a different problem, especially with utilities. But I'm not sure how in the Midwest, if they've been using it up north, in the Washington, state area. I'm not sure if they've been using it. I haven't heard.
Yeah, so I think I want to kind of track down. I remember we were at the one of the DOE tribal energy review events, and Seminole had talked about kind of the process of the barriers of rights of way and issuing a license to kind of not bypass the process itself, but as an interim measure for it. So, but
I think that the right of way, they get so buried in all the this encumbrance here. When it's for a tribe and it's doing it for their economic development or their housing, I think there are ways that that could be improved. Now I can understand if it's transmission coming through, utility, if it's gas line or if it's, electric line and stuff. I understand the right of way process and why that's needed, but when it's just for a tribal project, it shouldn't be so cumbersome.
Yeah, so Rob, what we're trying to do is like take this issue head on, like not pretend it's not an issue and like just hope that nobody turns it into an issue. Like we don't want anybody to be concerned that BIA is going to come back and put the kibosh on it. So we are, through that process I talked about under 84 of essentially sending these to BIA. So I've been talking with the Pacific Region office about working with a tribe on I'm just going to call it temporary easement because easements are allowable under 84, of actually having a sub 7-year one issued to them so that they have to actually respond. And they are raising it with their solicitors, right, with at least one solicitor right now to kind of get perspective on it. But we're, essentially going to force the issue to get them to get something in writing across the board. Because ultimately, when I was talking with them about it, they weren't really that familiar with it, and they also kind of, we're expressing it's like, we're not interested in trying to kill tribal energy projects either. Like we want to defer to the tribe's authority and jurisdiction as much as possible too. So like we're most people I've talked with from BIA are trying to work with tribes to empower them as much as possible. They're constrained by the statutes and regulations themselves. So I don't think that I'm not sensing any kind of resistance or otherwise major concern with it, but hopefully we can get it kind of documented across the board. So there is, it is agreed upon. I think from the utilities perspective, the tribes have interest in this infrastructure getting installed. Like tribes need power for their homes. They need these transformers. They need to interconnect these facilities. So, really, I think the BIA is most likely going to be deferring to the tribe for the tribe to come back and say, oh, this is an issue. This is a trespass. This is, we want to take an action on this. But tribes have a vested interest in maintaining access to the grid and to that power. So there's kind of that element that needs to be acknowledged there that, like we are pushing to help tribes get these things installed sooner, which will get the utilities paid faster. They'll make more money off of these homes and these facilities sooner than otherwise. And how do we simplify this process too? How can we streamline it regardless across the board? So, really good questions. Karen, I don't know if you can answer this question, but somebody asked which tribes are under contract for BIA services with Morongo.
We have 5 tribes: Saboba, Pachanga, Kauai, Chimawave, and we just had one more, and I can't think of it. What was it? Chimawave, and Morongo. So there's 5 right there. But yeah, so we work closely with all those tribes, helping them with their residential leasing, all that, rights of ways, service line agreements, all that kind of stuff.
So Karen, I guess from, you've kind of shared, I'm not seeing, so again, encourage people to ask questions, raise your hand, enter them in the chat. From your perspective, aside from, getting more common acceptance of the temporary easements, what are other areas, you have very in-depth knowledge on these, like where do you see room for improvement?
Wow. So, like I said, I don't think when it's a tribal project, I don't think it needs to be that cumbersome. It's like the Hearth Act. You're allowing us to approve a lease. Well, we need utilities, for that lease, for that economic development project. We should be able to approve a right of way. It's for the term of that lease. So that needs to be improved. For housing, it definitely needs to be improved. They're just coming off a distribution line. I understand they need to extend a distribution line, but I think that is too cumbersome for the housing groups. I really think that it should be something else besides a right of way. I really like the word encumbrance or easement rather than right of way. I think right of way should be for the larger projects, transmission, all, the larger stuff. So I'd like to see that improve too.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, being an attorney and knowing like the kind of there are going to be certain terms that have certain meanings, that's why I want to push to just like and work with you on this too, just to make sure that like, we're not confusing BIA, because what I'm worried is they would get a temporary access permit and they would start to try to, pull in once, 25 CFR 162 and try to apply that definition as a permit. So, I think easements might be the way to go in terms of naming these, to say, and maybe within the agreement defining the authority under which that easement's being issued as well.
Right. And like I said, and going back to, allowing the utility to go in, again, remember the utility is the applicant. They should be not afraid of allowing them to come in. They should be able to pull all of that documentation together. I mean, if they want the right of way, but it seems that the utility kind of just steps back and go, okay, we aren't quite sure what to do, but what does the application look like? BIA, give us all this documentation, and it just seems to really slow things down. When they could get in there, get the permit, get your right of way people, get on it, and get the right of way done. It shouldn't take 7 years to get a right away. And they're all worried about it being a temporary. I said, but you can do your right away and get it done in 2 years, So I just think that really needs to be explained more, I think, to the utility companies.
Yeah, and so TECC is making an effort, so hopefully that we can help streamline this process and be of service to tribes and the utility to kind of start to not just systematically streamline the processes, but be available for support in, doing the environmental, doing the surveys, going through the process, understanding what the requirements are, so that, there isn't this uncertainty, because I feel like that's a big part of it, is just like it's unfamiliar. And then, it involves different people from the tribe, from the utilities, and so how eliminating that, I think, could make things more efficient. But let's insert the temporary easements in the process, so that we're at least eliminating that additional 6 months to years on top of what can already be a long process to get service.
Right.
We're at time right now. I really appreciate, Karen, you being here and sharing all of your insights and knowledge, and the amazing work that you're doing, and showing what tribes could be doing on their own as well. I appreciate you all joining us here today. I want to invite you all to stay in touch on this issue and this topic. I think it's going to require us all to work together to overcome these challenges. So if you have any insights into legislation, who's working on that, how to move that forward, I would welcome an email on that as well, because we want to push for that. But really appreciate everybody, your time and your participation in all the TECC-X events.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
everybody.
so much, everyone.
Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Great to see the folks that are joining us.
Well, hi, everybody. I have to apologize for my voice. We're going to get through it, but I somehow got laryngitis in the last couple of days. It is better today than yesterday. So welcome. Tila, could you get our slides up and get us recording? So this is going to be the Tribal Climate Health Project breakout. And if you've joined us for previous TECC-X's, we always cover a different sort of adjacent field. So we've done tribal climate adaptation through transportation, or through energy and infrastructure and land use or land stewardship. Today we're doing public health. And we're going to be joined today by friends at the California Department of Public Health. So Elizabeth Rhodes is here with us today for at least a short while to do an introduction, till you'll hear from her in just a moment. And we are going to be spending most of our time today doing a facilitated feedback session, and it's particularly for tribal representatives, so tribal members, tribal leadership, tribal staff. So if that's not you, today is not the day that we are looking for your input. We specifically want input from folks representing tribes. Okay, so that's the plan for Today, can you go to the next slide? First things first, what I want you to do is actually go to this mural link. And so if you have a hard time with mural, we're going to help you out through it. So don't be worried. But Tila, if you could drop the mural link in the chat as well. So folks, that just looks like a board. There's a board that shows up on the left. It should have some yellow boxes. That's where we want you to sign in. Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. She says I sound pretty good. I don't know. On the left, so sign in. All you do when you sign in is to like get into mural, and then you're gonna click on one of these yellow boxes, and I want you to put your name and tribal affiliation. If you're having any trouble getting into mural or typing, you can actually just throw stuff in the chat and we'll drop it in for you, okay? So Camille, it's nice to see you. I see some familiar faces here. I am going to drop a note, hoping that there's some other folks that are in the other room that may still end up joining us. Hey, Shasta, could you go back to the other room and just make one more little note to folks to come on over?
Will do. If I can figure out how to leave this one. Let's see.
Okay.
I don't know how to leave.
Don't worry.
Oh, leave room, where it says leave room. Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay, great. All right, so Camille, I know you. We can drop you into the sign in here. Just want we'll want to be tracking how many actual tribal representatives we're going to have together today. If you're not a tribal representative, you may find the other option useful as well to go back to the other room. All right, so let's go in. To the next slide, please. Donna, were you able to sign in on the mural? No? Okay. Go ahead, everybody. Just drop your name and tribal affiliation in the chat, and Tila's going to help kind of enter that in. Okay. Well, great. So what we're up to today, we're going to spend most of our time here in this focus group. So I am Angie Hacker, so I am with Prosper Sustainably. I'm playing a couple of different roles here today. Normally, I'm here with the Tribal Climate Health Project, but today I am playing the role of an engagement contractor through Prosper Sustainably for the California Department of Public Health. And the focus group we're here to do today is to help inform the development of a shared vision and action plan for climate change and health equity. Okay, next slide, please. So our focus group today is going to just cover a couple of things. First, we're going to give you an overview of what is the shared vision and action plan. And then we're going to have most of our time in discussion where we're going to share with you the draft vision statement. And then I want to talk to you all about what barriers you're experiencing as you are trying to help your communities, your tribal communities, protect themselves from the impacts of climate change. And we'll share with you a little bit about the barriers we have already heard from tribes, but we want you to add to it. We'll end up trying to narrow down and prioritize a bit to the top two, and then we'll move our attention to action. So how would we address these barriers? I want to share with you some of what the California Department of Public Health and the local health jurisdictions they work with around the state are already doing with some sample actions just to wet the whistle a little. And then we're going to ask you to add to those. What other actions are you hoping California Department of Public Health and their Climate Change and Health Equity Department can do to support you as you're trying to protect your communities from the health impacts of climate change? And then we'll have a little bit of a discussion at the end once we learn a little bit about the prioritized actions. So you're going to pick two that are top for you. Of those, we'll talk a little bit about what's important for you as the California Department of Public Health implements those actions. And that's it. That's going to run us through the day, and then we'll wrap. Okay. So that's the plan for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a nice little group here. I think it's going to be a good discussion. Next slide, please. So I'm going to hand off to our friend Elizabeth Rhodes. She's with the California Department of Public Health, and she's going to give you a little bit of an introduction to this shared vision and action plan. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Great. Thanks so much, Angie. Appreciate you having me here today. My name is Elizabeth Rhodes. I use she, her pronouns. I'm joining from the Gabrielino Tongva Nation land in the Los Angeles region. And I serve as the Climate Change Local Assistance Manager in CDPH Office of Health Equity's Climate Change and Health Equity branch. We do not do short names in our department, apparently. And in the Climate Change Local Assistance Unit, we provide climate change and health equity technical assistance to tribes and to local health departments. And as Angie said, the focus today is introducing the shared vision and action plan for climate change and health equity process and getting some in-depth input from you all. I'm going to give a super quick overview before turning it over to Angie to facilitate that input. We also had a public kickoff session last month, and this whole year is focused on external engagement for the development of the plan. Next slide, please. So just to start, why is CDPH developing a shared vision and action plan for climate change and health equity? This was actually a process outlined in the California Climate Adaptation Strategy. I think you can go back one to the previous. That's our state's overarching framework for building our resilience to climate impacts. And this plan development is an action in the climate adaptation strategy that was actually advocated for by local health departments and community partners. And it calls on us at CDPH to collaborate with local health departments and communities facing climate and health inequities to develop a shared vision and action plan for protecting health equity and well-being in a changing climate. And just want to be very clear at the outset, the shared vision and action plan is not intended to suggest actions for tribes. Your ideas and perspectives here will help shape the climate and health goals and actions for the California Department of Public Health and for local health jurisdictions that strengthen partnership, coordination, and support to tribes and American Indian and Alaska Native communities. Next slide. So briefly, the goal of the plan is really to guide what the California Department of Public Health, CDPH, and local health departments are doing to understand, prevent, and protect Californians from the health impacts of climate change in the short term, like over the next 5 to 7 years. We want to reflect and support regional priorities, identify gaps and opportunities, and really support transparency and accountability for climate and health efforts. Although this plan won't offer funding, we do hope the actions that we're outlining here will direct future potential funding opportunities. Also, I'm noting you'll see on the slide sometimes local health jurisdictions. You may know them by the term local health departments, meaning city or county health departments. They have a important role in climate work. Next slide. So we want to dive into your feedback on what actions you want to see CDPH and local health departments undertake to protect health from climate impacts. And I'll just share some background information that can prepare you to suggest actions for the state and for local health departments. So you all know there's many important functions of public health. This slide describes 5 of them, and I'll go over this very briefly. So one is assessment, surveillance, and research. And as it relates to climate change, this can encompass activities that are like the monitoring, collecting, and analyzing of data. And epidemiologists will use these data to understand who is being impacted by climate-related events like extreme heat or wildfire smoke, and where people who are being impacted live. So those data help us understand who's being hurt most by the health impacts of climate change. Next, we have communication and education. And this includes developing and distributing accessible health information and engaging in two-way communication that helps build trusts with the populations that are served by public health and ensure accuracy and effectiveness of our health protection and promotion strategies. Number 3 is emergency preparedness, response, and recovery. So this is a classic function of public health, being ready to respond to disasters, to disease outbreaks, to other emergencies, and climate creates lots of emergencies, as we know. And so this is an important climate-related function that public health undertakes. Number 4 is partnership development and engagement. How public health departments bring people together and organizations together to tackle health challenges and share resources, listen and learn from the community. And then the last function is policy development and support, which really means working with organizations, communities, leaders to create and improve rules that help people stay healthy. And this includes identifying health problems, helping to shape solutions, and making sure solutions are put into action effectively. Next slide. I want to note that we have heard a lot of feedback that people are sick of plans. There are a lot of plans and we need to take action. And I happen to agree with that feedback and want to note that planning and doing can and are happening at the same time. So there's a lot of great climate work happening here at CDPH and also at local health departments and of course within tribes. And for CDPH and local health department actions, we've listed some of those actions here. And the main reason that the plan is needed is to shape and guide that work so that CDPH and local health departments are all headed in the same direction, that we're reducing the duplication of effort, we're making the best use of resources to help serve communities, community-based organizations, and tribes. So we're not waiting for the plan to conclude or be published to take action. We have a robust climate change and health equity branch with lots of projects underway. Now I will turn it over to Angie to facilitate some input.
All right, thank you so much for being with us, Elizabeth. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is the beginning. This is a really interactive session, and there's a good solid group of tribal representatives here in this group, but I'm going to need to actually hear from you. So it's not a multitasking kind of a session. All right, so the first thing we want to do is just share with you the draft vision and mission statement that CDPH has come up with. We have talked about this at our initial kickoff listening session. And so we're looking for a little bit more input on this draft vision statement. So, and one of the things we've heard is don't call it a mission statement. And so that might be one thing you tell us as well. I'll read it out loud, and then I'm going to ask you what about it resonates with you and what doesn't. And is anything important missing or needs to be changed? So this says the California Department of Public Health and the California local health jurisdictions envision a state where all Californians thrive in healthy, equitable, climate resilient, low carbon communities. The CDPH and LHJs work together to achieve this by researching, implementing, and supporting climate mitigation, adaptation, and resilience strategies that protect, promote, and improve health equity outcomes for all Californians. So I'm just looking for some reactions, and this part will be out loud. We're not going to be in the mural board for this. So what about this vision resonates with you? What doesn't? Is anything important missing or needs to be changed? I see Shasta making faces. You want to start off?
I mean, that's kind of my shtick. I make faces. So this isn't bad, but it's also it's very generic. And the thing is, if I'm gonna say that it's generic, then I should come up with something that is not generic to include in it. But I guess my broader take on vision and mission statements, and I know what they are. I've been through enough strategic planning processes, but they're just words, and so I'm just never really super excited about spending time on a mission statement. would rather, I guess I would rather see something with a little bit more bite here. But I don't know what that would be other than something very, very critical of, our mission acknowledges that climate change is real, whether you like it or not. You're muted, Angie.
Thank you. Thank you for that. It sounds like, okay, so we're gonna we'll be noting down, something with more bite, including the recognition, the reality of climate change. I like that. Anyone else here is having a feeling about this vision, and mission statement? What's missing here? What do you like about it? Donna, I see you thinking there. You guys are at the disadvantage of being on
Yeah,
camera.
I guess because I too agree with Shasta what she's saying. To me, if you don't have culture in there, the wellness piece, that's missing. So, yeah, and I don't like mission. I like purpose. So just a bias on my part. Sorry about that. So anyway, that's my two thoughts.
Thank you, Donna. I've heard that a lot when I work with tribes. I use purpose statement. Camille or others, are there others that have any thoughts on this before we move into talking about some barriers? Jeremy, I'm so glad you're here too.
Well, I think that it's pretty generic. It would be nice to sort of see something achievable, or at least something that is measurable in there. I know maybe it doesn't belong in the mission statement itself, but it would at least show what, real goalposts are out there. Because otherwise, yeah, it is kind of generic. Seen it in, 150 different mission statements.
Do you have any thoughts about what it would look like to seem more measurable and actionable? Like any words that and it doesn't have to, I hate group writing. This is not what we're doing here today. But just words that pop up to you that might make you feel like this is more actionable.
I guess it's just, I don't know, something that you can actually know when you're advancing towards it. Because a lot of these things are just, you're doing it forever, but how do you know if you're making progress? Or at least how do you determine progress? In other words, if you're moving towards it, how do you know if you're actually achieving? I don't know the words to actually replace these in doing that, but I think it would be maybe more engaging.
I agree with you. I think once we get through talking about some possible actions, that might help us spur what it looks like for us to actually do something about the challenges we're seeing. So I like what you're saying. We'll take note of that. Jeremy, I saw you come off mute for a moment. Did you want to say something here on the vision? Okay. I see you. Are you there? I can't hear you though. I think you came off mute.
Hi everyone. I'm sorry, Angie. Thank you. I was fiddling with my modules down here.
Oh, you might have fiddled again. You were so clear for a moment and then you disappeared. Well, we're gonna let you get your mic maybe figured out. Whatever you were doing was totally working. You can always throw things in the chat as well. Maybe bad reception. Well, your chat worked, so if you want to throw us a couple thoughts, no input. Okay, no input right now. All right, we got it. Well, thank you. Let's move on. So that just gave us a thought to what if we were CDPH? How would we drive ourselves towards the future that we're looking for? How are we going to get there? Let's go to the next slide. actually not the next slide. Tila, will you go ahead and drive up the mural? If everybody can go to the mural on your own screen as well, we're gonna scooch over and actually, can you show the red letters to Tila? The next section that we really want to talk about is going to be around the barriers that you, a little bit over to the left, that you are experiencing in your tribal communities. Can you go to the little to the left? There you go. As you try to protect your tribal communities' health from the impacts of climate change. And that's what CDPH is really looking to try to support you on. But in order to do that, they need to really better understand the barriers that you are facing on the ground as you are trying to do this work for yourself. So that's what the first conversation here is going to really look like, is what are the barriers that you are experiencing within your tribal communities? And here are a few that we have already collected, but it's really just a starting point. So maybe you can, let's see, I'm going to scooch in a little on mine and I'll just read these few out loud. First one says, wildfire causes air quality health impacts, but tribes do not have the specific data to support health impacts in their own community. Another is potable water sources and supplies are diminishing and being contaminated by flooding, and tribes need information on their community's water security and how to best manage it as climate change worsens. Another one we've heard is extreme heat requires emergency management, notification, and information, but tribes lack capacity and federal, excuse me, federal support. Folks tell us now more than ever. The last one that we already know a bit about is climate vulnerability information is in too many different places, and it's hard to know what is credible and meaningful. And so I want to give you a moment, and if you're able to be here in the mural and can fiddle around here, you can actually just go in here and add more barriers yourself. Otherwise, I want to have a conversation here. So you feel free to just say out loud what you're thinking, if and we can type it in for you if you have any trouble with the mural at all. So let's take a couple of minutes here just to hear a little bit about the barriers you're experiencing, and then I'm going to have a couple of follow-up questions for you. Thanks to those that are adding here in the mural. Jeremy or others, if you're experiencing any challenges, say it out loud or in the chat. We can grab it from the chat as well. And I might do some picking on folks too, just to kind of keep the conversation going. You can add more than one here. You can continue to add barriers. Nara, I have not met you before. I wonder if, would you mind saying hello and introducing yourself, and it just tell us, it doesn't have to be in eloquent barrier statement language, but just what is keeping you within your tribe from helping to better protect your tribes from the health impacts of climate change? Nara, are you able to? Are you still there? Or maybe Camille, would you mind sharing a bit here? We'll just kind of go around. Oh, Jeremy, thank you in the chat. Go ahead, Camille.
I don't know. I guess, yeah, I mean, it's hard to get community members to participate. I do agree that one is kind of primary ones, because you don't know where you need to go if you don't know where you are.
Yeah, thank you.
Or just highly resistant to participation, put it that way.
Yeah, so that sounds like this one that somebody typed in. Maybe that was Shasta. barriers to individual action, hard to get community members to participate in actions they can take. Yes. I see Jeremy in the chat here sharing about funding. Yep. Our friends at CDPH have been radically honest with us that funding is not their strong suit in terms of giving it out, at least not in the current environment. But so let's see. Jeremy also suggests that slow decision making at tribal council level and gathering community support over other immediate daily needs, the prioritizing of need and funding allocation. I see. Yeah, so you're talking about even within your own tribe, finding access to dollars to do this work is difficult. I think it's good. This is true all over the place. We would do a lot more if we had the funding to do it. We would bring on the staff to even go get the grants if we had the initial sort of core capacity dollars. Yes, thank you for that. Some other stuff that's popping up here, I'm just going to kind of read out loud. Tribal leadership does not always want to focus on climate issues. Folks don't always know what climate change and climate change and health outcomes are linked. Need more education. Good one. Okay, here's another one. When collecting data, turnover rate is very high. Data doesn't get collected for long time periods. Somebody said that one. Do you want to expand on that one a bit?
Hi, yeah, my name's Nara. I work for the Fallon Plate Shoshone Tribe as an environmental specialist. And one of the main issues that we've run into is that, you know, there's only like 3 of us in our office, right? So when it comes to our grants and collecting data and trying to come up with projects, it's very difficult because turnover rate in our tribe is, you know, very high. So yeah, I know when I started about a year ago, you know, the person before me, there wasn't a lot of data being collected. I kind of had to restart the program, you know, so I noticed that that's a big issue. And in terms of climate change is just finding the people, the time, and then being able to do something about it, create projects that can actually help the community.
Yes, thank you. It's so nice to hear your voice. Thank you for chiming in there. I think, you know, let us know if we got that down here in one of the post-its. Core capacity. I've worked with enough tribes to know that that is always the beginning. Shasta likes to call it the snowball effect, right, Shasta? Get a person, get a grant, go from there.
Yeah, you need money to get money, you know, so you got to start from somewhere, but it can be hard to even get over that initial hump because you're dealing with your day to day. But I see Anne put something in the chat. Couldn't get into the mural, but we have a climate adaptation plan. We have been having bad weather with snow, blizzards, and high winds. Been hard to get to work and going to get essentials for day-to-day living. Anne, did you put your information in the tribal affiliation notes? Because I see it says KCA, and that's not coming to my mind of what tribal community that is.
So from Alaska.
Oh, cool. Let's say, where are you having blizzards? And, you know, I mean, it does happen in California from time to time.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi.
Okay. I'm from Klawock, Alaska. I'm in the southeast Alaska. It's on the Panhandle, kind of closer to Ketchikan, Alaska. And we're on a remote island. So even with, you know, the winds, the snow blizzards, sometimes it's hard for, you know, the planes to get in with, you know, food and stuff like that also. And it's been that way for a couple of weeks or so now, and we've never had it this bad before. But, we're trying to make it work though.
Thanks for sharing that. That's great perspective, because down here in Southern California, last week we were in triple digits. You know, so yeah, so it's like, wow, what an amazing contrast. But you know, you talk about the food, and sorry, Angie, I'm doing my takeover thing while you're managing your voice. But there are communities in California where they've run out of water. And so, that's an issue, is trying to get water. So when the emergency actually happens, I think that's kind of a barrier too. Like, have you prepared for the emergency? So I don't know how to put this into a post-it, but basically there's a not being prepared until the emergency happens or not doing anything until the emergency happens is, so lack of preparedness, lack of like foresight, I guess, because it's always like, oh, that'll never happen here, and then it does.
Yeah.
We're never going to burn down, but we will, or we're never going to get sucked in by a blizzard, not be able to get out and get food until you do. So that's a barrier. I can't think of the word that I want, but basically just wishful thinking, I guess.
I think Tila might have got it. Tell me what you think. Did she get unable to bring in resources during an emergency, unable to prepare for emergencies ahead of time?
Yeah. I mean, there's a human, it's just a human thing, but procrastination, that's the word I was looking for. Wishful
Maybe
thinking and procrastination. I'm gonna put that in there.
Optimism is the problem. Let me read out a couple more. I see Donna very active in here. Thank you, Donna. About public domain allotment lands are often not included in U.S. Census data, therefore no support or funding, especially for non-federally recognized tribes. Often not on wildfire maps, disadvantaged communities, statewide service, support, research maps. Like, we don't exist. I live on 160 acres allotment. Thank you for that. Anne, let's go. One more comment from you. We're going to make a vote next.
Okay, I just had a quick comment on Shasta's. I could understand with your guys' water issues. It's pretty sad, and I've been seeing a lot of data centers are using up the water too. I've seen it in Colorado, Arizona. They're running out of water. The data centers like AI and Google are using up the waters, and when they use it, it's not reusable, and so it's a struggle.
Absolutely. Scares me.
Yes, it's got some issues down here in the Southwest. And it's nice to have your perspective here. Here's what we're gonna do. So Tila is setting us up to vote specifically on these barriers that are in the post-its in this barriers section. All that means is that I want you to have 2 votes, right? 2, Tila. So just pick of these, the top 2 that means that are the most critical barriers keeping you from better protecting tribal health from the impacts of climate change in your community. Which 2 of these resonate the most? So go ahead and start voting, Tila.
Wait, how do we vote?
Hold on, you got to cap. There we go. All right, so Tila. So you should see a little pop-up on your screen that says begin voting. You click the begin voting button, and then all you do is you click on the 2 post-its that you like the best, or really, I guess, that you maybe are most concerned about.
1 second, I think the selection didn't capture some of these sticky notes that were just barely outside of the selections. Let me see if I can.
You want to restart?
Yeah, I think I'm going to end and just restart it.
Okay.
Apologies.
Please hold all. Oh, okay. If you voted, you might have to re-vote. Give us one moment here.
I can delete the old session. Yes.
Okay, so round 2, same thing. We just have to be able to grab all these post-its so that you have the option to vote on any of them. There we go.
Okay.
Looks pretty good. Okay, cool. Now you can begin. 2 votes, everybody. I will not be voting, and if you are not a California-based tribal representative of some kind, you also should not be voting. Is anybody having any trouble getting in? You can also say it out loud.
Can't
Tila,
process my vote.
what's that?
It's telling me it can't process my vote. I only was allowed one vote. Why? Wait,
Really?
hold on. No, it's my fault. Never mind.
If you need to remove a vote, say if you accidentally click twice, you can click on the number and you can remove. Tila, are you seeing some activity going on here? All right, cool. Is anybody having trouble here in the mural voting? We're just trying to get a sense of prioritization. Which of these are really rising to the top in terms of where you want CDPH and its partners in the local health jurisdictions to focus their efforts. And that will help us in our next section when we're talking about how do we address these barriers. So let's give it another 20 seconds or so just to make your selections. Some of you are probably rereading these post-its. Anybody having any issues voting? Jeremy, Nara, Camille, Donna, you guys are all good?
Mine didn't pop up to do it, but I'm gonna put it in the chat. And I think I got my internet worked out.
Oh, that must be what's going on. Well, we see you. Nice to see you.
Good to see y'all as well.
Actually, tell me what your votes are because I get a vote and I'm not voting. I'll vote for you.
Okay. I'm gonna do lack of funding and capacity. Unable to bring resources in during emergencies. And extreme heat requires emergency management notification information.
You only get 2, Jeremy.
I know, no cheating.
I was trying. Just trying to participate here, y'all.
What are your top 2?
Lack of staff and capacity and unable to bring resources in.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank
Camille,
y'all.
did you come off mute for a sec? I think you might have.
No, I didn't have anything to say. I just was off mute and went back on.
What about Councilman Gutierrez from Mesa Grande?
Oh.
I'm leaning more towards lack of staff and funding. That's kind of our main issue. Our office is pretty small, including office staff itself. We only have 3 and we're pushing like 1,300 members. Yeah, so we're kind of slowly trudging through everything at the moment.
Yeah, that heard. Teal, I don't know if you get a vote, but you could vote for Sergio and do lack of staff and capacity and lack of funding.
I can't add an additional vote, but I will write it down so that we can get it afterwards.
Thank you. Yeah, my app is acting up at the moment.
Oh, just glad you're here.
Gutierrez, yes, thank you for being here. We'll have to add you to our sign-in. Okay, I think we should end voting. I think we should see how it looks. It's not going to be, it's not a scientific sample size, but it gives us a chance to kind of see where folks are leaning and landing. Here we go. There's a result. Lack of staff and or capacity and lack of funding. That is not surprising to me at all. The question for us will be, well, what can CDPH do about it? And there's not nothing they can do about it. So we'll have to do some brainstorming. The others that are coming in high also are political barriers at the federal level. Bunch of climate change deniers. I think I know who wrote that one. Allotment lands are often not on wildfire maps. Yep, this is about allotment lands. Unable to bring in resources during an emergency, unable to prepare for such emergencies ahead of time. And tribal leadership does not always want to focus on climate issues. Okay, let's see what the board looks like now. I think it should show us where the votes kind of landed. Yes, okay, perfect. So if you're in the mural, you just kind of click out of voting results. You can exit out of there. We're going to move to our next step. This is fun, everybody. This is a really good group. Thank you so much for your participation. Tila, can you scooch us now over where we can still see the red steps? We're on step 4 now, but let us see the top of the mural board. We're going to be on prioritizing actions that CDPH, that's California Department of Public Health, and the local health jurisdictions. Local health jurisdictions, those are your like county health departments, can take. And so the point of this process, right, the shared vision and action plan is not what tribes can do for yourselves or CBOs or others out there in community, but how can these guys that are already tasked with managing public health do what they can do from the outside to help you. You heard Elizabeth walk through some of the general public health climate functions, and those are across the top here. And so if you're following along in the mural, we had assessment, surveillance and research, communication and education, emergency preparedness, response and recovery, partnership development and engagement, policy development and support. So those are all the kinds of things that CDPH right now thinks that it can do, or within its universe of the possible as an agency, things that they can support. There are sample actions underneath each of these that really give you more of a flavor for what it is that CDPH and local health jurisdictions can already do. So what we're going to do in this piece is to just kind of look at those sample actions that are already CDPH is already undergoing. And then we want to think into, especially with the top barriers that we just talked about in mind, around lack of capacity, lack of funding, unable to move forward in emergencies with resources, allotment lands, and all the things on the left. What else do we want CDPH and its friends at the local health jurisdictions to be able to do? So of this list of sample actions, what else is missing here? So I want you to go ahead. You can grab Post-its, drop them in, right in there. It doesn't even have to be categorized the right way. But as you're doing that, I'm going to read some of these so you can just be dropping ideas. What do you want them to do? Think of these as action oriented. You want them with a verb in the beginning. CDPH or LHJ should do a thing. And that thing should be something that actually really supports you within a tribe in doing the work to protect your tribe from the health impacts of climate change. So I'm going to read some of these out loud just to give you sort of more of a flavor as you're thinking and writing and talking. If you're having trouble, and I know some of you are, I want you to just unmute yourself and we can type for you or throw it in the chat. So I'm going to start with assessment, surveillance, and research for us. That one that has a lot to do with data. Data has come up. Some things that CDPH already does is to monitor the health impacts of climate change or hazards, analyze data to identify inequities in health and climate impacts, create public dashboards and reports. They conduct vulnerability assessments. If you're really struggling, right, with in-house capacity, what could an external body or two be able to do for you? Assess and explore potential health and equity impacts of climate policies, research health and equity benefits of greenhouse gas reduction strategies. Under community education, we're talking about engaging with communities to learn how climate change and fossil fuel pollution harms health. I did hear some of you guys did talk a little bit about the need to educate communities, so maybe there's some things CDPH can do here to help. Educate policymakers about policy options with strong climate health and equity benefits. Educate policymakers in general, public about the health impacts of climate change, risk reduction strategies, and preparedness practices. That one sounds like something related to what you all were talking about before. So we'll move on. If you don't feel like any of these public health climate functions are really fitting, you can always drop it over in another section over on the right. It doesn't have to fit perfectly with any of these sections. If you have an idea, the most important thing is for those things that you have in mind that are barriers to you and your community's health, to be able to think now through the lens of CDPH and LHJs of what they can do to help you from the outside. Okay. So I'm just going to read a couple out of the emergency preparedness, response, and recovery. Is track and monitor health outcomes following a flood or wildfire smoke event, or update public health emergency operations and response plans to incorporate climate-related extreme weather events. Partnership development and engagement. So you can convene partners to develop programs that address inequitable living conditions. That probably resonates with some. Collaborate with local partners and tribes to develop culturally and linguistically appropriate communications materials, or establish relationships with communities, advocates, and tribes to guide and inform policy development, implementation, and evaluation. last but not least here on policy development and support, participate in local climate action or climate action plan development. Just noting that that's an option here too, not just about adaptation, but they're also talking about climate action, which is the mitigation side here. Develop policies to increase walking, cycling, transit access. And there are more here. These are just sample actions. I really think you guys are going to come up with things that are maybe more specific and, like Camille was saying, actionable, that CDPH can do to really help you. And I would say be bold here. This is the time for you to not be shy about some asks, but we did want to couch it within the realm of what is possible. All right, Jeremy, are you able to interact here, or do you have some ideas that we can help type in here for you?
I'm still absorbing and, and reading through them as I try to plan out my thoughts on what's missing on your third block here. So I'm still trying to go through them, circle back over if you don't mind.
No problem. Camille, are you unmuted?
Let me see. Yep, I'm unmuted. I don't know how that happened.
Oh, well, if you have something to say, great. I think folks are just trying to get their thoughts on a post-it. If anybody's struggling to put a thought in a post-it, just say it out loud and we'll make sure we get it in there for you. So take another minute or so here just to kind of absorb and brainstorm. Once we're done here, what we're going to do is do the same thing. Tila's going to run a little voting process for us. We're going to pick our top 2. We'll have a little discussion just so you could tell us about implementing, what's important about implementation. And then I'll wrap this up. So I'm going to read some of these new ones out loud. Identify what is currently working and ways to sustain successes. Partner with tribes to help them develop their own assessment and research tools. Prioritize actions and funding sources. Yeah, that's a good one. Who wrote that one? I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about that.
Which one?
Prioritize actions and funding sources.
I think that was Donna.
Yeah, it was me. I used
what would CDPH do?
Well, from my background, I used to be board chair for the Sacramento Urban Indian Health Program for about 10 years and worked on the National Council on Urban Indian Health, so a little bit familiar with health-related programs. And so a lot of times we don't take ownership of like prior plans that have been existing and things that have happened where we can forward successful action items, right? But also we start looking at our community and assessing the needs, then we need to really try to prioritize, not taking on too much or over guaranteeing things that we're going to do when we can't seek out the right funding source. So, making things achievable, but also making things that you're not overselling something, overcommitting. And I think that's important. But also the prioritization comes from the community. You have to get the community input and develop that, because with that, then you can get the ongoing support to keep the effort going, right?
Love it. Thank you, Donna. So nice to have you at our things. With your crazy mic, whatever is going on there. Okay, here's what I think we ought to do because we're running low on time. Tila, would you mind running our voting process? This one will take a little time because you have a lot of options to choose from. What we're doing here is, so thank you for brainstorming some additional strategies that you thought might have been missing that you would like CDPH to do. I want you to pick among both the sample actions and the actions that you added. So all the blue, purple, and green boxes here. I want you to select among those your top 2 that you really would, if you could choose, you would say CDPH, put all your time and money here. So Tila's going to try to grab all of them from across. And then we'll give you a couple minutes here just to pick your top 2, same way you did before, which, yeah, there's that screen. It says begin voting, and then you can click on whatever box you like the most. And Jeremy, this might be, I can vote for you because I do get a vote here. If you want to, and just whenever you're ready, say it out loud. Chairman Gutierrez, are you able to get in here with the mural? Are you able to click and vote?
You just got a promotion, Sergio. He's councilman.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What did I say?
Chairman.
Oh, sorry.
What did you vote?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm here. Yeah, I was saying earlier, my app's a little funky, as in it won't let me access everything kind of full screen, so I'm kind of half screening it at the moment.
Problem. If you want to say something out loud in terms of what your top 2 actions are, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm kind of all over the board at the moment. I'm kind of just taking in what everyone has to say at the moment.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. What we're trying to do here is give CDPH, right, a clearer picture of where we want them to spend their time and energy over the next 5 to 7 years. So all this goes to informing their SFAP.
Oh no, I totally understand. Yeah, the position that we're in, honestly, in any actions, kind of a step forward for us.
Yeah.
Angie, are we making a decision on the columns, emergency preparedness and response, or assessment, or like the green post that's down here?
The smaller, the actuals, like the actions. So either the sample actions or what actions are missing. So you can ignore that top row. Those are just categories. So we're almost out of time here. I do want to tell you what happens next as you're wrapping up voting here. This will help us quite a bit in terms of informing the SVAP when we, in response to this focus group, we're going to end up providing you with some follow-up information, including a comment form if you have other thoughts after today. So that will come via email. Actually, I'm going to put the comment in the chat right now in case there's more that you want to be able to say. So you have that handy to you. And then Tila, let's see, our votes coming in. Are you feeling good? I think we ought to kind of close it so people can leave if they need to.
Yeah, I think we're good to close it.
All right, let's do 5 seconds left. So go ahead and vote if you can. Oh, Jeremy's putting it in the chat. So we got tech assist and support tribal specific policy advocacy. Wonderful. All right, let's close that and see what the results were. All right, prioritize actions and funding sources. I think everybody's feeling really strongly about funding. We also see produce culturally and community-based information, support policies that are tribal specific, partner with tribes to help them develop their own assessments and research tools, educate policymakers and general public about the health impacts of climate change, analyze data and identify inequities in health and climate impacts. So those are the ones that got some votes. Well, great. Everybody, I am going to go ahead because I know we're at time here and say thank you so much for the input that you provided today. I am send a chat here to everyone in the meet. This is the comment. Here we go. That's the comment form. In case you have other thoughts, and you'll see a follow-up to this meeting to provide you with another opportunity to add more comments to it. We really appreciate you spending the time here to tell us a little bit more about your thoughts. And if you are interested in providing additional thoughts, I have one more interview slot. If you would like to spend some additional time, that will give us a chance to dive further into what it would actually look like to implement some of these strategies. But with that, I just want to say thanks again for showing up. CDPH says thanks too, and we'll be happy to share with you a draft of the shared vision and action plan when it's complete later on down the line in about a year.